We live in a time when there are a bunch of theologians that identify as apologists. There is a lot to that. For one, it's just fashionable right now. For another, the life of a missionary isn't for everyone, yet we live in a Christian subculture that puts a lot of emphasis on how many people we have converted. For another, we live in a time when the church is going through decline, and there's a natural desire to stop the people that are leaving. Beyond these, every person is a unique individual, and I'm sure there will be plenty of apologists that don't feel described by any of these. I don't identify as an apologist. I don't have a problem with people that do. That's just not my primary approach to theology. I find that for the things that really speak to me, trying to turn it into an apologetic lesson often gets in the way. A few years ago, I saw a post in a Facebook group asking how the church fathers could be wrong about Matthew in Hebrew. So I started discussing my reasons for thinking that Matthew was written in Hebrew. A third party added their question. Since it's all fairy tales, who cares what language it was written in? My answer was simple. I do. Apparently the OP does too. They tried to keep the fight going, repeating that it's all fairy tales, to which I simply answered, I disagree. But you're welcome to your opinion. I didn't have time to argue with them and continue the other conversation, which was the one I was more interested in. Here's the thing. The person who started the post, who was also not a believer, was impressed by my restraint. Is it really restraint to just not talk to someone about something you don't want to talk to them about? This led them to listen to me more deeply. I was able to give all my reasons, which was timely because I was just getting my notes together on this subject, and they softened on their anti-Christianity stance. I don't know what became of them. A short bit later, I started pulling together my notes and publishing them on my blog, which turned out to be a much larger project than I originally intended. I didn't get to keep up with much while doing that. Be that as it may, in that particular case the hard line, I've got an answer for everything, apologist was actually a barrier to them coming to faith. They had heard all the answers, but they saw Christianity as a dead field of study. Seeing me digging into manuscripts, comparing linguistics, talking about the weak points in my argument and the strong points in my argument, etc., showed them that this is still a living field of study. On the other end, I've known at least one person who has started to deconstruct their faith upon learning that there might be a Hebrew Matthew behind the Greek they were raised to believe in. That's the story of every King James only apologist. They knew someone that read the NIV, and it was missing the doxology on the Lord's Prayer, or something, and that caused them to deconstruct. So now that apologist is on a mission to make sure no one ever does that again. For me, that's the problem with many apologists. They're so concerned with converting people or stopping people from deconstructing their faith that they don't care what's actually true. The King James only apologist doesn't care if the doxology belongs on the Lord's Prayer. They only care that it lacking causes people to question. I'm exactly the other way. I don't care if it causes people to question. I only care if it belongs there, and the evidence for or against it. I have not done a deep dive on that section. One of the things that I found interesting when I was checking alternate readings for the Masoretic Matthew was that there's variation in the doxology across the SDM family. I'm not at all confident that the doxology would survive the rigorous probes of a trained textual critic even once they confine themselves to the SDM Hebrew text. I included it because it met the standards I was using, and because I like it, but my standards were not rigorous. I can't honestly say whether I think the doxology belongs there or not. Some will deconstruct over that. This will cause some apologists to pull their hair out. But here's the way I look at it. No matter your view of salvation by faith, that faith they had before being exposed to this new knowledge wasn't the kind to save them anyway. They didn't believe in Jesus. They believed in the doxology. They didn't treat the Lord's Prayer as a teaching from God, but as a magic spell to keep them out of hell. I'm not worried about them deconstructing. Maybe after they finish their deconstruction, they'll have actual faith in the actual Jesus. If they don't, they won't be any worse off. That is the biggest difference between me and theologians that identify as apologists. The apologist just wants to see a conversion. I just want to see more people get deeper into the truth. If getting deeper into the truth causes them to stumble, I'm fine with that. If they are invested in something that isn't real, then they aren't invested in the Jesus who is the way, the truth, and the life. To me, that would be the real tragedy. To convince someone to join the church or not to leave it who did decades of service in this life, and then at the resurrection all they heard was, "I never knew you." Thank you for watching my video. If you like theological and philosophical insights and deep dives into tough theological questions, rather than just the normal fluff that you will get from an apologetic channel or a normal Sunday sermon, then consider subscribing and hitting the bell. Also, if you like what you've heard here and want more, links to my blog, Amazon author page, and Zazzle products page are in the description.